The viewing gallery trembled as another transport ship docked with the Galactic Council station. Robert Hayes pressed his palm against the transparent wall and watched the lights of 100 different worlds blink in the darkness beyond. He had traveled 4 months to reach this place, carrying hopes that felt heavier than any cargo. "They will laugh at us," Priya Reddy said beside him. She clutched a data tablet against her chest like a shield. "The preliminary reports already call Earth a hazard world." Robert turned from the window. "Let them laugh. We came to join, not to beg." The council chamber waited 3 levels down. Robert had seen pictures, but nothing prepared him for the reality. The room stretched wide enough to hold a small city. Seats rose in curved tiers, each occupied by beings that represented civilizations thousands of years older than humanity. Some had scales that caught the light. Others floated in containment fields filled with colored gas. A few looked almost human, except for the extra arms or the eyes that glowed without pupils. Ambassador Quilner dominated the center platform. His species had evolved from something like birds, though his wings had long since adapted for grasping instead of flight. Feathers of deep blue covered his form, and when he spoke, his voice carried across the chamber without need for amplification. "The humans wish to address this council," Quilner announced. His tone suggested he was introducing a mildly amusing entertainment rather than serious candidates for membership. Robert walked forward. His shoes clicked against the polished floor, and he heard the sound echo back from 1,000 different surfaces. He stopped at the designated speaking circle and waited while the translation systems engaged. "Humanity requests full membership in the Galactic Council," Robert said. "We offer our knowledge, our skills, and our commitment to peaceful cooperation." Quilner's head tilted in what might have been amusement. "We have reviewed your world. Tell me, Ambassador Hayes, is it true that your atmosphere contains 21% oxygen?" "That's correct." A ripple of sound moved through the chamber. Robert couldn't tell if it was shock or laughter or something else entirely. "Oxygen is a corrosive element," a voice called from the upper tiers. Robert identified the speaker as Director Havron, whose insectoid body occupied a seat 3 times larger than most. "It burns, it rusts, it destroys." "Our bodies adapted to use it," Robert replied. "We turn oxygen into energy." "How primitive," Quilner said. "My own world maintains an atmosphere of noble gases, stable, peaceful, unlike your violent storms and dangerous pressure systems." Priya stepped forward before Robert could respond. "Our weather patterns are well within acceptable ranges." "Acceptable," Quilner activated a holographic display. Earth appeared above them, rotating slowly. "Your atmospheric pressure varies wildly depending on elevation. Your weather systems generate winds that exceed 200 kilometers per hour. Your oceans create pressure differentials that would crush most civilized beings." He gestured at the display with one wing arm. "This is not a world that nurtures intelligence. This is a world at war with itself." "Yet intelligence arose there anyway," Robert said quietly. "By accident, surely." Quilner dismissed the hologram with a flick. "The Council has already prepared our decision. We grant humanity probationary observer status. You may watch our proceedings and learn from civilizations that evolved under more favorable conditions. Perhaps in a few centuries, you will understand how to properly manage a planet." Robert felt Priya's hand touch his arm, a warning to stay calm. He breathed slowly and prepared to thank the council for their consideration, knowing the fight was not over but merely postponed. Then the alarm started. The sound cut through every conversation in the chamber. Lights shifted from white to amber. Quilner's feathers ruffled in agitation as he accessed the emergency systems. "We have a distress signal," he announced. "Mining colony on Velar 3. Complete atmospheric processor failure during a major storm system." The holographic display changed. A planet appeared, smaller than Earth but denser. Its atmosphere showed bands of yellow and brown clouds that churned in obvious turbulence. "How many colonists?" Havrin asked. 847, someone reported from a control station. "All species. They have approximately 36 hours before life support fails completely." "Dispatch emergency response teams immediately," Quilner ordered. Robert watched as data streamed across multiple displays. He saw the specifications for Velar 3 and felt something cold settle in his stomach. The atmospheric pressure read at 2.3 times Earth standard. The chemical composition included sulfuric compounds. Temperature fluctuations exceeded 50 degrees within a single rotation. "Sir," a technician spoke hesitantly from a control station. "Commander Thrix reports that standard environmental suits cannot function in those conditions. Maximum rated pressure is 1.5 Earth standard." Silence filled the chamber. Robert looked at the faces around him and saw fear, confusion, and something else: helplessness. "There must be alternatives," Havrin insisted. "Modified suits, reinforced vessels." "Development would take weeks," Thrix's voice came through the communication system. "The colonists have hours." Quilner's feathers lay flat against his body. "Are we to abandon them?" "The conditions are too severe," Thrix said. "No council species can operate in such an environment. I am sorry." Robert cleared his throat. Every head in the chamber turned toward him. "Humans can go," he said. For 3 full seconds, nobody spoke. Then Quilner made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. "You jest," the ambassador said. "That atmosphere would kill you within minutes." "Actually," Priya said, accessing her data tablet, "humans regularly work in pressures exceeding 3 times surface standard. Our deep-sea operations prepare us for exactly this kind of environment." "Impossible," Quilner stated flatly. "Let us try," Robert said. "We have a ship in dock. Give us the coordinates." "This is madness." Quilner looked to Havrin. "They will die and we will be responsible." Robert met his eyes. "Those colonists will definitely die if nobody tries. Let us prove what Earth's atmosphere taught us to survive." The human ship moved through the docking bay like a predator waking from sleep. Lieutenant David Park watched through the command deck viewport as the council station fell away behind them. 12 people aboard, 847 lives waiting ahead. "Transit time to Velar 3 is 7 hours, the navigation officer reported. "We're cleared for direct approach." David nodded and activated the ship-wide communication. "All personnel, this is Park. We have one objective: get those colonists out alive. Check your gear twice. Rest while you can. When we hit atmosphere, there's no time for mistakes." He cut the channel and pulled up the environmental data again. The numbers glowed on his screen like a challenge. Atmospheric pressure, 2.3 standard. Wind speeds averaging 150 kilometers per hour with gusts to 200. Chemical composition hostile to most organic compounds. Temperature swings that would freeze water and boil it within the same day. "Looks like a Tuesday back home," Amy Ross said from the engineering station. She was already suited up, her helmet resting on the console beside her. "Remember that hurricane season when we pulled those researchers from the oil platform?" "Weather was worse then," David agreed. "Wind hit 240 before we got them out." "Think the council believes that?" "Doesn't matter what they believe. Matters what we can do." Priya joined them from the medical bay. She carried supply containers marked with symbols that would mean nothing to most council species. Pressure bandages designed for deep-sea injuries. Medications that worked when the body was under extreme stress. Equipment built for environments that most civilizations considered uninhabitable. "I've been monitoring the council channels," she said. "They're broadcasting our approach. Half of them think we're heroes. The other half think we're suicidal." "What does Quilner think?" David asked. "He stopped talking an hour ago, just watching." The ship pushed deeper into space. David used the travel time to review his team. Each person had been chosen for specific skills. 3 had worked deep-sea rescue. 2 came from high-altitude mountain operations. 1 had spent years in atmospheric research stations that floated in Earth's storm systems, gathering data while lightning cracked around them. They were not soldiers. They were not warriors. They were technicians and scientists and rescue specialists who had learned their trade in the worst conditions Earth could create. Approaching Velar 3, the navigator called out, "Permission to enter atmosphere." David checked his console. The Council observers had taken position in high orbit, far enough to watch but too distant to help. 847 people waited below, and their time was running out. "Permission granted, take us in." The ship shuddered as it hit the outer atmosphere. Turbulence rattled the hull, but the systems held steady. David watched the external cameras as clouds rushed past, thick and yellow with sulfuric compounds. Lightning arced between pressure systems, illuminating the chaos in brief flashes. "Pressure increasing," the pilot reported. 1.5 standard, 1.8, 2.0. The ship groaned but continued its descent. David heard someone on the Council channel gasp as the readings climbed higher. 2.2, 2.3. The hull creaked under the strain, but Earth engineering had built this vessel to withstand depths where water itself became solid from pressure alone. "Colony located," sensors reported. 12 kilometers northwest, setting approach vector. The colony appeared through the murk like an island in a toxic sea. Dome structures clustered together, their surfaces already showing stress fractures from the atmospheric assault. Lights flickered inside, growing dimmer with each moment. David activated his suit and sealed the helmet. Around him, the rest of the team did the same. The suits were bulky, designed with overlapping layers that could handle pressure differentials that would pop a normal being like a bubble. The materials came from deep ocean engineering, tested in trenches where the weight of water above could crush steel. "External pressure 2.4 and rising," Amy reported. "Storm system intensifying." "Time to colony." 3 minutes to landing, another 2 to reach the airlocks. David opened the communication channel to the colony. "This is Lieutenant Park of the Human Rescue Team. We're coming in. Prepare your most critical patients for immediate evacuation." The response came through broken with static. "Human team, this is Overseer Mandek. We have 112 in critical condition. Atmosphere processors failed 6 hours ago. Internal air is degrading." "Understood. How many can walk?" "Perhaps 400. The rest will need assistance." David did the math quickly. 12 rescue personnel. 747 colonists who could not move on their own or needed medical attention. The ship could carry maybe 200 at most in emergency conditions. "We'll make multiple trips," David said. "Start with the critical cases, pack them in tight." "Lieutenant, the storm will peak in 4 hours. After that, we cannot guarantee landing site stability." "Then we work fast, park out." The ship touched down hard, its landing struts sinking into ground that had turned to mud under the constant rain of corrosive compounds. David was first out of the airlock, dropping 3 meters to the surface. The impact jarred his knees even through the suit cushioning. Wind hit him like a physical blow. He leaned into it, using techniques learned in typhoons and hurricanes, letting the force push against his center of mass while his feet stayed planted. Around him, the team deployed with practiced efficiency. "Pressure 2.6, someone reported, gusting to 2.8. Amy laughed over the comm. "Feels like home." They ran toward the colony airlocks. The external cameras on David's helmet recorded everything, broadcasting back to the Council observers. He wondered what they saw, probably madness. Humans sprinting through conditions that should have killed them, moving with confidence through an environment that represented a nightmare to species who had evolved under gentle skis. The colony airlock opened. Mandek stood there, his body supported by a breathing apparatus. His species resembled something between a crab and a flower, with multiple limbs that trembled from the strain of surviving in failing life support. "You came," he whispered. "You actually came." "We're here," David confirmed. "Now let's get your people out." Amy Ross had seen broken machinery in every environment Earth could offer. Flooded engine rooms, frozen hydraulic systems on mountain peaks, equipment that had corroded under salt spray and pressure until it barely resembled its original form. But the atmospheric processors in front of her represented a new kind of failure. "This is bad," she said into her helmet comm. "Cascade failure across all filtration stages. The pressure differential blew out the primary seals, and then the backup systems overloaded trying to compensate." David's voice crackled back through the static. "Can you fix it?" "Maybe, if I had a week and a full workshop." She ran her gloved hand along a cracked manifold. "But that's not what you're asking, is it? Can you fix it in 4 hours?" Amy looked at the readings on her portable diagnostic unit. The storm outside was building toward something catastrophic. Wind speeds climbing, pressure spikes becoming more frequent. If the processors stayed offline, even evacuation would not save everyone. They could not move 800 people before the storm peaked. "I need to access the external regulators," she said. "They're outside the dome." Silence on the comm for 3 seconds. Then David spoke, his voice carefully neutral. "Outside means exposed to full atmospheric conditions." "I know what it means. Current pressure is 2.7 standard. Weather Service predicts 2.9 at peak." "I grew up in Florida," Amy replied. "I've rebuilt generators during hurricanes. This is just a bigger storm." She gathered her tools and headed for the external airlock. Behind her, Priya worked in the medical bay with efficiency that came from years of emergency response. The doctor moved between patients, her hands steady as she attached monitoring equipment to beings whose biology she had studied only from textbooks. "This one needs immediate pressure regulation," Priya called to her assistants. "His respiratory system is collapsing. Get him on supplemental support." A young technician struggled with the equipment. "I don't understand this species' physiology." "You don't need to understand everything. You need to keep them breathing until we get them to the ship." Priya demonstrated the connection points. "See, their gas exchange happens here and here. Monitor these readings. If they drop below this line, call me immediately." The technician nodded and moved to the next patient. Around them, the colony interior showed signs of prolonged stress. Walls had condensation from the failing environmental controls. The air smelled wrong, thick with carbon dioxide and other compounds that the processors should have removed. Outside, Amy stood in the airlock and watched the pressure gauge climb as the chamber equalized with the external atmosphere. 2.7, 2.8 as a gust hit the dome. The outer door opened and wind screamed through the gap. She stepped out into chaos. The ground beneath her feet was slick with liquid that was not quite water. The sulfuric compounds in the atmosphere had mixed with local minerals to create a substance that burned through anything organic. It ate at her suit's outer layer, but the material was designed to ablaze, to sacrifice itself slowly while protecting what lay beneath. "I'm at the external processors," Amy reported, "beginning diagnostic." The equipment stood 3 meters tall, designed to pull in the hostile atmosphere and transform it into something breathable. Massive filters lay cracked and broken. Pressure housings had split along their seams. The damage was worse than the internal sensors had shown. Amy pulled open access panels and traced the failure cascade. The primary failure point was obvious, a seal that had degraded under constant pressure cycling. Standard maintenance would have caught it, but the colony had operated on a tight budget. They had pushed their safety margins, and the equipment had failed at the worst possible moment. I can bypass the damaged sections, she said. Reroute flow through the secondary systems. It won't be pretty, but it'll keep atmosphere flowing. How long? David asked. 2 hours if everything goes right. 3 if I hit complications. The storm peaks in 3.5 hours. Amy looked at her tool kit. Then she looked at the broken machinery. Then she started working. The wind pushed against her, trying to knock her from her feet. She braced against the processor housing and used her body weight as an anchor. Her hands moved through practiced motions, disconnecting failed components and rerouting connections. Each bolt she removed, each panel she opened, brought her closer to a solution. 1 hour passed. The pressure climbed to 2.8 standard. Rain began to fall, if rain was the right word for the corrosive liquid that hammered against her suit. Warning lights flashed on her helmet display as the outer layer degraded faster than designed. Suit integrity at 70%, her computer informed her. She ignored it and kept working. Inside the colony, David organized the evacuation with military precision. The most critical patients went first, carried by human hands to the ship. Each trip took 20 minutes. They could manage maybe 3 trips per hour if they pushed hard. We have 180 evacuated, someone reported. 667 remaining. David did the math and did not like the answer. Even if Amy got the processors online, they needed more time. Time they did not have. Double up, he ordered. Pack the ship tighter. We'll worry about comfort after everyone's alive. The evacuation continued. Humans moved through the colony like a well-oiled machine, each person knowing their role. They lifted beings twice their size. They navigated narrow corridors filled with unfamiliar equipment. They worked without complaint, without hesitation, because 847 lives depended on them. Amy finished the last connection and stepped back. The processors hummed to life, struggling against the damaged components but functioning. Atmosphere began to flow again, cleaning the colony air one molecule at a time. Processors online, she reported. Output at 60% capacity, but it's stable. Good work, David said. Now get back inside before that suit fails completely. Amy looked at her integrity reading, 40% and falling. The outer layer was nearly gone, eaten away by the atmosphere, but she had bought them time. She walked back to the airlock as the storm reached its peak. Wind hit her so hard she stumbled. Pressure spiked to 2.9 standard and her suit screamed warnings. But she made it to the door, cycled through, and collapsed inside the colony. Priya was there immediately, checking her for exposure injuries. You're insane, the doctor said. Probably, Amy agreed, but the processors are running. The storm reached levels that made even veterans nervous. Wind speeds hit 220 kilometers per hour, carrying debris that hammered against the colony domes like projectiles. Pressure spiked to 3.0 standard in the gusts, then dropped to 2.6 in the lulls. The atmosphere itself seemed to be at war. David stood at the colony control center and watched the external monitors. The human ship sat on the landing pad, its hull taking punishment that would have shredded most council vessels. But Earth engineering understood storms. Every rivet, every seal, every structural member had been designed by people who knew what weather could do. Fourth evacuation group is loading now, his second officer reported. 340 evacuated total, 507 remaining. And the storm. Peak conditions for at least another hour. Weather systems show no sign of breaking. David pulled up the processor status. Amy's repairs held, but barely. The equipment ran at its limits, struggling to clean enough atmosphere to keep everyone alive. If anything else failed, they were back to emergency evacuation only, and that meant leaving people behind. Get me Mandek, he said. The colony overseer appeared on screen, his multiple limbs trembling from exhaustion. Lieutenant Park, your people have performed miracles today. The miracles aren't done yet. I need to know about your critical infrastructure. What else is on the edge of failure? Mandek hesitated. The main power generator is showing stress fractures. The pressure cycling has exceeded its design parameters. If it fails, everything fails. Processors, life support, even basic lighting. We would have perhaps 30 minutes before the colony becomes uninhabitable. David closed his eyes and did the math again. 507 people, 30 minutes. It was not enough time, not even close. Can anyone here repair the generator? He asked. It requires external access. The repair ports are outside the dome. Mandek's voice carried defeat. None of my people can survive in these conditions long enough to attempt repairs. But humans can. Lieutenant, the storm is at its worst. Even your remarkable suits have limits. David opened the comm to his engineering team. Who has generator experience? Two voices responded, Chris Bennett and Rodriguez. Both had worked on power systems in extreme conditions. Both knew what they were volunteering for. Suit up, David ordered. Mandek will provide the technical specifications. I want that generator running at stable levels within the hour. Chris and Rodriguez moved to the airlock without complaint. David watched them go and wondered how many times he could ask people to risk their lives before his luck ran out. But he already knew the answer. As many times as necessary. That was what Earth had taught them. When conditions were impossible, you did the impossible anyway. The two engineers cycled through the airlock and disappeared into the storm. David switched his monitor to their helmet cameras and watched as they fought their way toward the generator housing. The wind pushed them sideways. Rain obscured their vision. Lightning cracked overhead, close enough that the electromagnetic pulse disrupted their calm for several seconds. This is worse than that typhoon in the Pacific, Rodriguez said once the connection restored. At least that one was just water, Chris replied. This stuff is trying to melt my suit. They reached the generator and pulled open the access panels. The damage was immediately obvious. Pressure cycling had created stress fractures in the containment housing. The generator still functioned, but each cycle brought it closer to catastrophic failure. We need to reinforce the housing, Chris said. Weld support struts across the fracture points. In this storm, the wind will blow us away from the weld points. Then we anchor ourselves, use magnetic clamps. They worked with the kind of coordination that came from shared experience. Rodriguez positioned the support struts while Chris prepared the welding equipment. Both of them fought against wind that tried to tear them from their positions. Inside the colony, Priya continued her medical work. She had triaged every patient, categorizing them by severity and evacuation priority. The ones who could survive waited patiently. The ones who could not received her constant attention. This one is crashing, an assistant called out. Respiratory failure. Priya moved to the patient, her hands already reaching for equipment. The being before her had biology nothing like human, but the principles of emergency medicine translated across species. Oxygen deprivation looked the same everywhere. Get me the universal respiratory support, she ordered, and prepare a pressure infusion. We need to stabilize the gas exchange ratio. She worked with calm efficiency, making adjustments based on sensor readings and her own observations. The patient stabilized slowly, returning from the edge of death one breath at a time. You saved him, the assistant said with something like wonder. We saved him, Priya corrected. Now move to the next one. We have a lot more work to do. Outside, Chris completed the last weld and stepped back to inspect the work. The support struts crossed the fracture points like a spider web, distributing the stress load across a wider area. It was not pretty, but it was functional. Generator housing reinforced, he reported. Running stress analysis now. The portable scanner showed green readings across the board. The fractures still existed, but they had stopped growing. The generator could continue operation without immediate risk of failure. "Good work," David said over the comm. "Get back inside." Chris and Rodriguez started toward the airlock, but a massive gust hit them both. Wind speed spiked to 250 kilometers per hour, and Rodriguez went down hard. His suit scraped across the ground, tearing through the outer layer. "Suit breach," his computer announced. "Integrity at 20%. Chris grabbed his partner and pulled him upright. Together they staggered toward the airlock, fighting against wind that seemed determined to kill them. Rodriguez's suit continued to degrade, eaten by the corrosive atmosphere. Warning lights flashed across his helmet display. "Almost there," Chris said. "Keep moving." They reached the airlock with Rodriguez's suit integrity at 5%. The door closed behind them and pressure equalized. When they removed their helmets, Rodriguez was pale and shaking, but alive. "That was too close," he said. "But the generator is stable," David replied. "And stable means we have time to evacuate everyone." The storm began to break 2 hours later. Wind speeds dropped. Pressure stabilized. The evacuation continued at a steady pace, and as the last colonist boarded the ship, David allowed himself to believe they might actually succeed. The council chamber had never been so quiet. 8 days had passed since the Velar 3 rescue, and every seat was occupied. No one wanted to miss this session. Robert Hayes stood in the speaking circle again, but this time the atmosphere felt different. The mockery was gone, replaced by something harder to identify. Director Havrin called the session to order with a gesture of his forward limbs. "We convene to review the Velar 3 incident and determine the appropriate response to human actions during the crisis." A holographic display activated above the chamber floor. Images appeared from the rescue operation. Humans working in conditions that should have killed them. David's team moving through the storm with calm efficiency. Amy repairing processors while her suit dissolved around her. Chris and Rodriguez welding support struts while wind tried to tear them away. 847 colonists were rescued, Havrin continued. 0 fatalities. This outcome was achieved in atmospheric conditions rated as extreme hazard level 7. For context, no council species is cleared to operate beyond hazard level 3. Quilner sat in his elevated seat, his blue feathers dull in the chamber lighting. He had not spoken publicly since the rescue ended. Now he activated his microphone, and every head turned toward him. "I wish to offer testimony," he said quietly. "The council recognizes Ambassador Quilner," Havrin replied. Quilner stood and descended from his seat to the main floor. He walked to the center platform where Robert stood and faced him directly. "I mocked your world," Quilner said. "I called Earth's atmosphere barbaric and violent. I suggested that humans were primitive beings shaped by a primitive environment." He paused, his throat feathers ruffling with what might have been shame. "I was wrong." Robert said nothing, letting the alien continue. "My species eliminated atmospheric challenges 12,000 years ago. We engineered our world to perfection, stable pressure, gentle winds, predictable weather patterns. We built a paradise, and in that paradise we grew soft." Quilner gestured at the holographic images. "We cannot do what you did. Our biology cannot handle it. Our psychology cannot handle it. We evolved past the need for such resilience, and in doing so we lost the capacity for it." "You learned to thrive in comfort," Robert said. "That's not weakness." "But it is limitation." Quilner turned to address the full council. "Earth's atmosphere, which I scorned, creates pressure variations that exceed anything my species experiences across our entire world. Your weather systems generate forces that would devastate our cities. You breathe an atmosphere so reactive it would be classified as an industrial hazard on most council worlds." He looked back at Robert. "And yet you thrive. More than thrive. You excel in conditions that would kill us." Priya stepped forward, her data tablet in hand. "If I may present comparative analysis." Havrin nodded permission. Images appeared showing atmospheric data from a dozen different worlds. Priya highlighted each in turn, her voice carrying the authority of scientific evidence rather than pride. The average council homeworld maintains atmospheric pressure variance of less than 5% across its entire surface. Earth varies by nearly 40% from sea level to high-altitude zones. Council worlds experience wind speeds averaging 20 kilometers per hour with occasional spikes to 60. Earth regularly produces wind systems exceeding 200 kilometers per hour. She pulled up oxygen content charts. Most council species breathe atmospheres with oxygen concentrations below 8%. Earth maintains 21%. This high concentration supports the intense metabolic processes that allow humans to operate at peak efficiency for extended periods. More charts appeared: temperature ranges, pressure cycling frequencies, storm system intensities. Every metric showed the same pattern. Earth was an outlier, a world that existed at the extreme edge of habitability, where other species would require extensive environmental protection just to survive normal conditions. "We are not superior," Priya concluded. "We are adapted. Earth taught us to handle variation, to thrive in chaos, to treat extreme conditions as normal. What you see as barbaric, we see as Tuesday afternoon." Commander Thrix activated his microphone from the military section. "I have reviewed the tactical implications of human capabilities. The galaxy contains thousands of worlds classified as too hostile for colonization, mineral-rich planets, strategic locations, resources we cannot access because the atmospheric conditions exceed our operational limits." He gestured at the Velar 3 footage. "Humans can access those worlds easily." "You suggest military applications?" Havrin asked. "I suggest practical applications. Rescue operations in hostile environments, resource extraction from high-hazard worlds, emergency response to atmospheric disasters. Humans can operate where we cannot. That makes them invaluable to Council interests." The chamber filled with conversations as Council members discussed the implications. Robert listened and heard the shift. They were no longer debating whether humans deserved membership. They were calculating how to utilize human capabilities. A new voice cut through the discussions. Overseer Mandek appeared via holographic projection, his form still showing signs of the ordeal he had survived. "I speak as someone whose life was saved by humans," Mandek said. "My entire colony was saved. We faced certain death and the Council could not help us. Our own people could not help us. But humans came. They walked into conditions that terrified us, and they worked with confidence born from experience we cannot imagine." He turned his projection to face Robert directly. "Ambassador Hayes, you told us that Earth's atmosphere made you who you are. I understand now what you meant. Your world tested you every day of your evolution. It pushed you to adapt or die. And you adapted so well that our nightmare became your routine." Mandek turned back to the Council. "I vote for full human membership, not out of gratitude alone, though I am grateful, but because the galaxy needs what humans can offer. We need beings who do not break when conditions become extreme. We need people who learn to thrive in chaos." Havrin called for order as the chamber erupted in discussion. "The Council will now vote on human membership status, all in favor of granting full membership rights." The voting display activated. Green lights appeared across the board. One after another, Council members registered their approval. Even species who had never spoken to humans before voted yes. The final count appeared: unanimous approval. "Humanity is granted full Council membership," Havrin announced, "with special designation as Primary Atmospheric Response Force. Welcome to the Galactic Council, Ambassador Hayes." Robert felt Priya's hand on his shoulder. Around them, the chamber filled with sounds that might have been applause or might have been something else entirely. But the meaning was clear. Humans had proven themselves not through weapons or technology, but through the simple ability to survive what others could not. 6 months changed everything. The Council Station now hosted a permanent human atmospheric response team, their ships docked in a dedicated bay. Robert walked through the corridors and noticed how other species no longer stared at humans with confusion. They stared with recognition, sometimes with relief. Ambassador Hayes, Quilner approached from a side passage, his feathers arranged in a pattern that Robert had learned meant respect. "Do you have a moment?" They found a quiet observation deck overlooking the construction zone where new rescue vessels were being built. Half were human designs. The other half attempted to incorporate human engineering principles into frameworks suitable for other species. "I owe you an apology that goes beyond my public statement," Quilner said. "When you first arrived, I saw primitives from a backwards world. I genuinely believed you had nothing to offer." "You weren't entirely wrong," Robert replied. "By many measures, Earth is backwards. We're still dealing with conflicts that your people resolved millennia ago. Our technology lags behind Council standards in most areas. But not where it matters most." Quilner gestured at the construction bay. "Those ships are based on human deep-sea vessel designs, pressure hulls that can withstand forces we never imagined facing. Life support systems designed for variation rather than stability, navigation that expects chaos instead of order. Different approaches for different environments. More than that," Quilner turned to face Robert fully. "My people eliminated environmental challenge 10,000 years ago. We thought we had achieved perfection. But in removing all hardship, we also removed the pressure that drives adaptation. We became stagnant without realizing it." A notification chimed on Robert's communication device. Another emergency call. He checked the details and felt a familiar tension settle into his shoulders. "Mineral extraction facility on Kilos 9. Toxic atmosphere, extreme temperature cycling. Equipment failure has trapped 200 workers." "Council response teams?" Quilner asked. "Already on site, but conditions exceed their operational limits. They're requesting human assistance." "How soon can you deploy?" "David's team is ready now. They can launch within the hour." Quilner watched as Robert sent the authorization. "This is the 4th crisis response this month, all in environments we classify as uninhabitable." "Uninhabitable to most species," Robert corrected. "Difficult for humans, there's a difference." The human response ship detached from its dock and accelerated toward the crisis zone. Robert pulled up the mission details and studied the atmospheric composition of Kilos 9. Ammonia clouds, pressure at 4.2 standard, temperature swings of 80 degrees, volcanic activity creating unpredictable weather patterns. It would have been considered extreme even by Earth standards. But humans had learned to work in underwater volcanic vents, in storm systems that spawned tornadoes, in temperature extremes that ranged from Arctic to desert within single-day cycles. Earth had been a brutal teacher, but thorough. "I spoke with our atmospheric science division," Quilner continued. "They want to establish a research station on Earth, to study how your weather systems function, to understand the forces that shaped your evolution. Many of them won't be able to handle Earth's conditions. We know the initial team will work from orbital platforms, but eventually we hope to build tolerance, to learn what you learned even if we can never match your capability." Robert considered the implications. Council species studying Earth not as a curiosity, but as a model. The world they had mocked becoming a subject of serious research. "There's a bigger question here," he said. "The Council has existed for 50,000 years. You've encountered thousands of species. How many of them came from worlds like Earth?" Quilner's silence was answer enough. "None," Robert finished. "Because species from harsh worlds are rare. Most life evolves on gentle worlds where conditions are stable. The universe favors easy environments." which means what you offer is genuinely unique. We cannot replicate it. We can only appreciate it and learn from it where possible. Another message arrived. David's team had reached Kilos 9 and begun rescue operations. The initial report was optimistic. Conditions were challenging but manageable. Expected completion time, 8 hours. Priya joined them on the observation deck, carrying a stack of research proposals. The Xenobiology department wants to study human adaptation mechanisms. Specifically, how our bodies handle rapid pressure changes and extreme atmospheric variation. More research, Robert asked. They're calling it the Earth Environmental Resilience Project. Goal is to identify whether other species can be trained or genetically adapted to handle harsh environments. She set the proposals on a nearby table. They're also asking permission to document human childhood development on Earth. They want to understand how exposure to variable conditions during growth affects long-term capabilities. They want to study our children. They want to understand how Earth creates humans who can do what we do. The Council has accepted that they cannot match us, but they're hoping they can close the gap. Robert looked out at the Council station, at the hundreds of species represented in its corridors. Each had evolved along different paths, developing different strengths. Some excelled at abstract mathematics. Others had mastered energy manipulation or biological engineering. Humans had mastered survival. Tell them yes, he said, with appropriate oversight and ethical guidelines. If studying how Earth shaped us helps them understand their own limitations and strengths, that benefits everyone. The emergency channel activated again. Another crisis, another impossible environment. This time a research station in a gas giant's upper atmosphere, where pressure and wind speeds exceeded anything humans had faced before. David's voice came through clearly despite the distance. We're finishing here in 6 hours. Can handle the gas giant situation after a brief rest period. Acknowledged, Robert replied. Good work on Kilos 9. Just another day at the office. Robert closed the channel and turned back to Quilner and Priya. When we first came here, I wanted the Council to accept us as equals, to see past our differences and recognize our potential. And now, Quilner asked. Now I realize we're not equals. No species is equal to any other. We're different, shaped by different worlds, different challenges, different paths. Earth made us good at surviving hostile atmospheres. Other worlds made other species good at other things. The Council works because we bring different strengths together. A diplomatic answer, Quilner observed. But an honest one. What Earth's atmosphere taught us matters, but what your world taught your people matters too. We need both. The galaxy needs both. A new ship entered the construction bay. Human design but built by a mixed crew of human and Council engineers. The hull showed innovations from both approaches. Pressure resistance from Earth, energy efficiency from Council technology, different strengths working together. Ambassador Hayes, Havron's voice came through the station communication system. We have another situation developing. Multiple facility failures across 3 different hostile environment worlds. This appears to be coordinated equipment sabotage. Robert felt the weight of responsibility settle across his shoulders. 6 months ago, humans had been probationary observers. Now they were essential response force for a galaxy that had never needed one before. Assemble the full response team, he ordered, and pull in Council tactical support. If this is sabotage, we need more than just rescue capability. Understood. Council security forces are standing by. Robert looked at Quilner. Still think Earth's atmosphere was a liability. I think Earth's atmosphere was the best thing that ever happened to this galaxy, Quilner replied, even if we were too blind to see it at first. The human response teams deployed into the darkness, heading toward environments that would kill most beings. But for humans, shaped by a world that tested them every single day, It was just another mission. Just another chance to prove that what others called impossible was simply difficult. And difficult was something Earth had taught them to handle a very long time ago.